Hey, I'm Dan from RV Leaguers, and this is Reels on Wheels. This week we're talking about Dazed and Confused, but before we get into it, I want to say thank you for checking out the Reels on Wheels movie club. If you don't know what that is, I'm choosing one film a week to watch and dive into. I announced the movie of the week in advance so you can watch too, and I'm hoping to kick off a discussion by sharing my thoughts on the film. For more, be sure to check out the links in the description below. We've got an accompanying blog post to this review. And also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the bell for more RV Leaguers and Reels on Wheels. We've spent the last few weeks in Austin, Texas, so I really wanted to pick a film related to this place. Richard Linklater is probably the most well-known Austin filmmaker. He even started the Austin Film Society back in 1985. I chose Dazed and Confused partly because it's Linklater's classic coming-of-age comedy, and also partly because it happened to be available on Hulu. The film features an ensemble cast portraying a diverse set of high school personalities and cliques to broadly capture the sense of youth, mayhem, and angst associated with a typical small-town American high school experience. Linklater wrote and directed the film, drawing on his personal experience as a Texas high schooler in the 1970s. As I mentioned earlier, we're currently in Austin, where Dazed and Confused was filmed. In fact, at least some of the party at the Moon Tower sequence was filmed at Walter E. Long Metropolitan Park, which is actually located just 1 minute down the road from our current campground. The movie benefits greatly from filming around town at real locations, conveying the sense that these characters were real high school kids with real high school problems. It succeeds at portraying the Austin area specifically, but also feels appropriately generic, so it's relatable to anyone who grew up in a small town, anywhere USA. Linklater's humanist writing and style is amplified by setting these characters in recognizable places. Having grown up in a small town myself, I can say that the setting of this film and many of the personalities felt very familiar. Dazed and Confused is over 25 years old and set in 1976, but there is certainly a through line of the small-town American experience that transcends many of the changes that have taken place over this time period. The film's setting plays a role in this, but it's really the cast of characters we see on screen and their mostly hilarious interactions that form the core of this film. Dazed and Confused is hard to capture in a plot summary, which I tried to do in my written review, which you can check out at rvleaguers.com. There's a link in the description. But it's hard to capture in a plot summary sense because so much of what makes it great has nothing to do with the plot. There are some characters that are more like traditional protagonists, like Pink or Mitch, and some more like traditional protagonists, like the brutish O'Banion chasing down the underclassmen. But overall, the movie tends to feel largely plotless, and I mean that in a good way. After all, high school doesn't really have a plot either. What largely defines high school is different types of kids all growing up together. Sometimes that means butting heads, but sometimes that means coming together in unexpected ways. And Linklater does a great job of showing how these various groups, from jocks, popular kids, intellectuals, stoners, partiers, upperclassmen, underclassmen, and more, can all be distinguished but can also overlap. He does so not by relying heavily on tropes that have become familiar in high school movies, but through clever writing and dialogue that have stood the test of time. This movie is not grand, it's not centered around anything particularly compelling. There's not much in the way of significant motivation or character conflict beyond the hazing rituals and the decision about the pledge, but that's also the movie's strength. Many high school movies have a tendency to over-dramatize the experience. It's tropes that we're all pretty familiar with now. You know, prom is the most important night of your life, or it's the football championship, or graduation is going to change everything, just to name a few examples. But by keeping the overarching stakes in this movie realistically inconsequential, Linklater keeps the audience's focus on the personal. Just like in life, the high school experiences portrayed here are really only important for these specific kids in these specific moments, and the slice of life shown here, just one day in these kids' lives, allows us to go along for the ride with these characters acting as a conduit for the audience. We don't know any of the characters particularly well, but there are certainly enough for most people to relate to at least one. The movie transports you into this world even for one fleeting mayhem-filled day. And while some iconic moments and characters have pervaded pop culture, particularly Matthew McConaughey's Wooderson, by the end, you're left with mostly just a feeling. That high school feeling. And that's what makes Dazed and Confused truly a cult classic that stands the test of time. Linklater manages to capture the high school experience genuinely while also infusing comedy at every turn. In a lighthearted way, the film deals with important themes associated with youth, like the difficulties of growing up, grappling with the oncoming adulthood and the impacts of the passage of time. It also portrays the mostly innocent fun of just being a kid, muddling through your teenage years one way or the other, and we've all been there. Ultimately, as Witterson says, you just gotta keep living, man. Livin. But what did you think of Dazed and Confused? Did you find it relatable as a coming-of-age story? Let me know in the comments or at RV Leaguers on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Thanks again for checking out the Reels on Wheels Movie Club. Stay tuned for an announcement on this week's Movie of the Week, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the bell for more Reels on Wheels and RV Leaguers adventures.